Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Last week, the Speaker and I had a meeting with the President. I had an opportunity to bring up the Zika virus, something that the administration obviously is concerned about it as well. Secretary Burwell, at my request, is coming up later today to give us the latest on that issue. We're all quite concerned about it and hope that we'll be able to get on top of this and not have another situation like we had with Ebola. With regard to North Korea, the event of last weekend certainly underscores again the timeliness of the bill that Cory Gardner and Bob Corker have put together, which we'll be voting on tomorrow without amendment. So I think that's an indication of the seriousness of the issue. I think both sides have obviously restrained themselves from trying to turn this into something other than a North Korea sanctions bill. And then we're going to move to the Customs Conference Report, and I'd like to highlight, in addition to the substance of that, it also contains permanent internet tax freedom. This is another tax relief measure that we've done in dribs and drabs for a long time. In fact, I think we've done 8 extensions of the internet tax freedom provision. This would make it permanent, another important accomplishment of this new majority. Senator Cornyn.
We know there are a lot of differences between the political parties, between the Congress and the White House, but again, looking at ways we can find consensus and build consensus. Tomorrow, Chairman Grassley is convening a hearing on the mental health issue and its intersection with our criminal justice system. The fact is, our streets and our jails and our prisons have become places where people with serious mental illness have become warehoused without treating the underlying causes of their mental illness. And so there's legislation that is going to come from the Health Committee. Senator Alexander, Senator Murray are working on. Dr. Cassidy on our side is working on another bill with his House counterparts, and I've introduced something called the Mental Health and Safe Communities Act to try to provide families with additional tools that they can use to help a loved one who is at risk of becoming a danger to themselves or others. So thanks to Chairman Grassley for convening that hearing. Perhaps this is another area we can find common cause with our colleagues across the aisle in the White House, and another major accomplishment for the 114th Congress.
The Republican-led Senate is committed to passing legislation, moving legislation that addresses the two principal concerns the American people have, economic security and national security. The Gallup poll that came out a week ago indicated that those are the #1 issues, not just for Republicans, but for Democrats as well. And so the energy bill that we've been trying to move across the floor addresses the issue of economic security by helping us pay for more energy, or I should say produce more energy and pay less for energy, which means more money in the pockets of American citizens and families, and obviously better jobs for people out there who are looking for work. When it comes to the issue of national security, this week we will move the North Korea sanctions bill, which imposes strengthened sanctions against an increasingly aggressive North Korean regime. Those are two issues that we think the American people care deeply about. The President seems to be more concerned about legacy issues. His failed strategic patience approach to North Korea is not working, and the mandates and taxes and regulatory burden that he continues to impose on our economy is costing us jobs and making it more difficult for people to get back on their feet. We're going to continue to work here as Republicans in the Senate on the issues that we think are important to the American people and good for America's national security and economic security interests.
Well, as a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, I want to talk a little bit about this North Korea sanctions bill that we'll be voting on tomorrow. North Korea continues to be an international threat, and that threat level increases, as we've seen with this long-range missile launch this past weekend. I'm not surprised that North Korea has done this when you take a look at the nuclear testing done last month, for which North Korea paid no price. Might have been some tough talk by the United States or by China or by the United Nations, but they essentially paid no price. And when you look at an adversary and you say, what are their potential, what are their intent, you worry about the increasing capacity that North Korea has. Now, the President's had a policy with regard to North Korea for the last 7 years that he's been in office. It's been called strategic patience. It has been a strategic failure. We need to actually put some bite into some sanctions, and we know that North Korea works through banking, through China. They move money that way, they buy weapons that way, luxury goods, and the bill that we're ready to pass tomorrow in the United States Senate will put the kind of bite that we need to, rather than just tough talk from this administration.
Well, we're all concerned, as families are concerned, about the Zika virus. I've called, as chairman of the Health and Human Services Appropriating Committee, we'll have a hearing Thursday morning on the emergency funding request. I'd also say that there's still money left that was appropriated for Ebola, but it was Ebola and other infectious diseases. And so there's no immediate shortage of money for the administration to do what they think needs to be done. In addition to that line item, we increased funding for the National Institute of Health, for CDC, and for a number of other agencies that deal with this kind of thing. So those agencies in the short term have more money than they have had previously to deal with this and other issues. The Ebola line item is particularly helpful in this case, and we'll have Secretary Burwell and others here on Thursday to talk about the emergency request that they're making. We all believe this needs to be dealt with. We want it to be dealt with in the best possible way and in the quickest possible way, and we'll be asking the questions that hopefully allow that to happen.
I think it's worth noting that the President's new budget, his final budget as President of the United States, has arrived with a resounding thud here in the Congress of the United States. And I want to challenge our friends in the press. I think you will search in vain for press releases from members of the Democratic caucus in either the House and the Senate commending the President on his final budget. And I would commend also to your attention this analysis done by the Republican leadership of the Joint Economic Committee, wherein it points out that on the really crucial issues of addressing the growing debt crisis, the President's budget does nothing. On the really important issue and component of the growing debt crisis of restraining growth in mandatory spending, the President's budget does nothing. For the past 5 years, we've had divided government in Washington, D.C., in that we've had a Democratic administration and a Republican-led House of Representatives. For the past year, we've added to that a Republican Senate. In the past, divided government has been a time when the President of the United States could reach out to congressional leaders of the other party and make tough decisions to help rein in debt and help address the debt for coming generations. Sadly, this final budget of the Obama administration misses the President's final opportunity to reach out and do big things in a time of divided government to address one of the real crises that we have, and that's this growing debt. Very regrettable.
Senator McConnell, is there any kind of progress in talking about as far as the Marketplace Fairness Act, which a number of
Yeah.
Republicans
I've indicated to the supporters of marketplace fairness that we'll have an opportunity to consider that sometime this year.
I'm wondering if you have any reaction to the infighting that's happening already on the other side of the budget with the Republicans. Some say they want to walk away from the $30 billion in a 2-year deal. I know that's the type of fight we were trying to avoid this year, but what can you do on this side to ensure that it doesn't come?
I had a hard time understanding the first part of your question.
The House Republicans are fighting about whether or not to include the $30 billion in spending that was included to
Yeah.
the deal.
Well, I mean, we are as well discussing the way forward on the budget. I don't have any news to make today on that subject.
Republican candidates for president over the weekend discussed whether or not to bring the water rate back in the fight against terrorism. They think, many of them think that it should be brought back. Do you agree? Do you feel that water board should be brought back in the fight against terrorism?
Well, look, I'm among those, again speaking for myself, who think Guantanamo ought to remain open, that it's the perfect place for terrorists, that the principal goal in capturing a terrorist is to interrogate them, not to convict them. I think looking for a criminal conviction is a different sort of thing. It seems to me the policy of this administration has been to either kill the terrorists, not that I'm opposed to that, but even more valuable frequently is capturing a terrorist and interrogating them. They seem to be intent on either killing the terrorists or mainstreaming them into a criminal court. I think that is not a good policy in trying to prevent future terrorist attacks. With regard to the tactics used in interrogation, I think we all know what the law is. I would certainly favor using every appropriate method of interrogation and put off for quite a while whether or not to seek a conviction, because conviction's pretty easy to get, I would think, in most of these cases. What you really want is what does the terrorist know and can you thwart the next attack?
Senator,
Yeah.
Following up on the question on the Marketplace Fairness Act, with your commitment to advance that later this year, are you confident that you can have enough votes to invoke cloture on the customs bill and avoid any point of...
Well, we're hoping to pass the customs bill this week, and we'll find out on Thursday.
Senator, moving on to customs now, does that reflect any waning optimism that you actually can deal on Flint and early the end?
Well, Flint is tied to the energy bill, and Chairman Mikowski is continuing to talk to the senators from Michigan. We're still trying to find a way forward. The only thing I would say on that issue is that virtually every member of the Senate has significant environmental issues at home. We understand and have great compassion for what's happened in Flint, and we're hoping that at some point we can find a resolution of that issue and pass this very significant bipartisan energy bill. Thank you.